Are good.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I know people are probably trickling in, but we have an exciting 45 minutes to an hour of content coming up. And I am very lucky to be joined today by two wonderful people in the industry who actually came up with this idea with me. So this is a very exciting first foray into doing, a kind of focused and specialized webinar. Here at Management One, we do a lot of educational content, and we try to provide, some industry insights for both our clients and people following along. And today we're doing something a little bit different, and that's really focusing in on one industry in particular, that being yarn. So with us today, I couldn't think of two more perfect people to be joining me, and that is Cathy McKillip from Retail Profit Makers, who I'm sure is no stranger to the people joining in on this call and the writ large yarn community. And of course, Sunni Scrivner, who is the owner of Yarn in Eureka. And we are very excited to have you both. And I want to say thank you to both of you for letting me in today to the community. And one of the things that I come from a men's and women's fashion background. And one of the things that, as I've worked with Management One and really had a chance to travel to all sorts of trade events and shows, one of the things that has always impressed me about retailers in specifically the yarn community and is that there's a tight-knit mentality, right? And that was no pun intended, but I will take it. There really is, I think, a desire to lift each other up as one industry. And as independent retailers, I think that there's nothing cooler and more important than that. So hopefully, over the next 45 minutes, we can, shed some light on, what's working for Sunni, what's working for Cathy and her clients, and what we're noticing in some trends in general. So I'm going to kind of jump in and just address some housekeeping. First off, we really want this to be something that you all participate in, everyone on the call. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom. As we're going through, please feel free to jump in with questions, ask away. We're here to support you. And so if there are any questions as we kind of go along, we'll try to answer them as they come. And then we'll save some time at the end as well for a more formal Q&A. And then just a reminder, we will be sending this recording out. So if you have to jump off early, if you just want to make sure that you're grabbing every word, because you have registered for the event, you will have a link with the recording that will be hitting your inbox within a few hours of us closing down. So don't worry, you will have the webinar that you can watch whenever and wherever you would like. So Sunni, I know we wanted to make sure that happens, so we will get that out to everyone. And before we really jump in, I just want to talk a little bit about who Management One is, what we do, and I think it will help put into context a little bit more what we're going to be talking about. So first off, Management One is a inventory planning and financial management company. So what we're really focusing on is how do we find profit and better cash flow management through the lens of your inventory. Inventory is, for any retailer, the largest expense on the books. It is where most of your cash continuously flows right back into inventory. So having proper controls and proper management around your inventory is probably one of the most important things you can do in order to achieve financial success as a retailer. And we're so lucky that we get to work with not just our clients, but we work with affiliates throughout the country, like Cathy, who are working one-on-one with clients to really not just, put a barrage of numbers in front of you, but really explain what's happening in the business and what moves you can make to put yourself in a better financial position. So our core values are generous heart, courage, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration, and that runs through everything that we do, including this webinar. So I'm going to kind of kick things off with a little bit of an economic overview of where we're at just from an overall economic standpoint. And then I'm going to bring Sunni and Cathy into the conversation to talk a little bit more specifics. Does that sound good, Sunni, Cathy?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. So first off, let's talk about where we are right now as a general US economy. Well, we're at a really interesting time. So the interesting thing about what's happening right now is from a numbers perspective, things are looking pretty good, right? Our GDP is up. Q3 was up a 4.9%. Jobs are plentiful right now. There is employment to be had. Unemployment rate is, tracking at the lowest it's been. We added 150,000 new jobs in October. And most importantly, to retailers, consumer spending has remained strong. So we're seeing it in all types of sectors. The retail industry has, showed growth, and services have certainly shown growth. So I like to use the example, look no further than Taylor Swift concert tickets if you want to see proof that the economy still has some might and muscle in it. And inflation has been kind of moderating itself. We saw this astronomical rise in pricing and inflationary times, and that's kind of leveling out. Consumer debt and delinquencies, they remain historically low. Most consumers are paying their bills. So these are kind of the general indicators of the economy that you want to see to indicate strength. However, even as we're reporting all these great numbers from the US economy, there are some signs of trouble in paradise. Mainly, there still is a general feeling out there of a little bit of pessimism about the economy. And we call it, there's an economist who termed the coin the vibe session. And what that generally means is, well, the economic indicators are strong, but people are still feeling pessimistic about the economy. And that could have real world implications, especially for retail, right? If people, no matter what is actually going on, if people don't feel great about the economy, it may influence their spending, which could trickle down and impact retailers. Interest rates are definitely high, especially in the housing market. Consumer debt delinquencies are rising, right? So that's something that we saw on the other slide, that it's looking good for right now, but it is starting to rise. So it is something that we want to keep track of. And most forecasts in general are calling for a slower growth to the economy, especially in retail. In 2001, 2002, post-pandemic, we saw some of the biggest booms to the retail industry, right? And everyone was a little bit different. Some people were closed in 2020. Some people had great banner years in 2020. Maybe even some of you guys, because people were finding new hobbies and getting involved in new areas. But 2021 and 2022 were certainly banner years in retail. And now we're seeing forecasts of a little bit slower growth. And so let me just change the next slide. And so what does all this mean, right? And this is where we're going to kind of come to in this conversation, is that, wow, I'm seeing these big numbers and it looks like, GDP is up, inflation is flattening, but what does that mean for me? Like, it's great that we can talk about this, but what does that mean for me? And remember, when we look at economic data, it's looking at a very bird's eye view of the entire landscape, whether that be the entire US economy or the entire retail industry. And so you don't want to ignore it, but you want to remember that what is almost more important is what's going on and the trends in your local region, in your local market. And when we're speaking in this circumstance, well, what's actually going on? What's the boots on the ground report from yarn retailers, right? Because that's going to be probably the most significant to you, right? So we could be experiencing this slowdown of the overall economy, but the yarn industry might be seeing great increases, or vice versa. We may be seeing a slowdown in the US economy, but your town may be booming, and there may have been a new plant that opened up that's bringing new jobs and new life into the town. So we want to take economic data with a grain of salt and really focus in on not just what's happening in the big picture, but what's happening in the local region and your industry as well. And so before I kind of open this up, I just want to share one thing, which is probably the most important thing I can share about the economic data right now. And that is what we are seeing at Management One. And we work with thousands of retailers across the country. We have a big concentration of retailers in the yarn, knit, and even the quilt communities. So we're seeing data not just from this big macro level, we're starting to see, well, what's actually happening in independent retail. And time again, and again, this may not speak directly for you, but here are the overall trends that we're seeing within the independent retail community. Sales are softening, right? Again, we talked about those big booms in 2022 and 2021. So sales are softening. And yet, inventory levels are remaining sky high. So that is potentially a recipe for not so great business. Even if your sales are maintaining or plateauing or beating LY, if your inventory is way out of line and way out of whack, that could mean danger up ahead. So what we're hoping to do on this call today is kind of talk about some strategies and talk about some methods that we can really focus in on that second piece of it. How do we control the controllables? And inventory is certainly a controllable. So Sunni, Cathy, I kind of want to bring you in to add some color right now and really just ask, what are you observing happening across the board? And then we can talk about some strategies of how we're combating
it. So what I'm seeing across my clients is certain classifications are actually still growing, even though overall sales might be softening or the growth not as much, just like you were pointing out. And many of my clients are holding more inventory at this time in the year than they were last year. So that means in December, we've got to put some aggressive strategies in place to balance that out and to turn some of that inventory into cash before it ages way too much.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm loving that we're doing this call on November 30th. Right?
Me too. Yeah. Me
tomorrow,
too.
I don't know how this happened. It's December, and we are in the home stretch. So, Sunni, how are you feeling going into December with 2024 right around the corner?
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation and invite other shop owner friends is because I am actually feeling pretty good about it. My sales have been up all year. But also I think the key for me has been working with Cathy and with Management One and getting my inventory like totally dialed in, that has made just such a huge impact on my sales and my profitability, because I'm not holding too much inventory. I might have, a little bit extra in a couple of categories, but overall I'm in pretty good shape. And then, Cathy helps me figure out like where I have too much. And then I come up with ways to start focusing on getting rid of that stuff. And so that's where I am right now, is planning for December and really looking at, okay, what are the things that I want to move out of here before the end of the year? And how am I going to do that? And so I'm starting some things coming up in December that will be focusing on doing that.
Yeah, and so, Cathy, you said something that I really loved, which is even if sales are softening, you're still seeing growth within categories. And so you put those two things together. What you were just saying is like, hey, I'm actually feeling confident going in because I have a plan of attack. Right? Like I know what I need to get done in order to, walk into the new year feeling good about my inventory levels. You're not flying blind through this process. How long have you been working with Cathy?
Not quite a year. I think we started after the beginning of
Mhm.
like maybe January or February of this year. So not quite a year, but I've been working with Retail Orbit, which is maybe you'll talk about that, but the inventory system that you guys use. I've been working with that piece of your company for I think 3 years. And that has been just so key. I know we're going to go into that more in a little bit, but just starting even with that part of the program, like those numbers is so important. And then I meet with Cathy once a month to go through all of those. So I know you're going to show us more of that kind of thing in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll definitely jump into some numbers and talk Retail Orbit. And again, this next slide kind of goes right into what Cathy was saying, is that what is so important, and again, when we're talking about these bigger economic trends, and even when we're talking about what's happening in Sunni's business, right? That may not be dollar for dollar what's happening in your business. And so there is nothing more important than understanding and paying attention to what your own data is telling you. Every time your cash register rings, it is telling another piece of the story. You are collecting data about your business. You're collecting data about your customer, what their spending patterns are, what the trends are. And so the most important thing you can do is be tracking your own data to make the right decisions for the business. And so as we kind of get to the end of the year, there are real implications for what happens right now. The major one being, right, one, this is now a very kind of promotional time. And we'll talk about some strategies at the end to kind of deal with that. But I do want to remind everyone that the inventory that you carry, if your fiscal year ends at the end of December, you will be taxed on your inventory. So it is really important, if you have goods and you have merchandise that is, what I like to call kind of dead merchandise, right? It's aged, it's been there, it's maybe seasonal, it's out of style. You're always going to have your core basics and your core kind of fabrics and some items that are maybe perennial. But what is not needed right now, there are real tax implications for keeping them into the new year. And if you can make moves, now is the time to make it.
There's also the piece that you'll have to count it in January. So like, I always think about that too. Like, do I want to count this again? Like, get it out. I don't want to count that again.
Right.
Yeah.
And even the basics, like if basics have been sitting there for 6 months and haven't moved, try a different basic, like move this one out and bring in something else. This is especially true in yarn or fabric, because customers will buy new basics, but if they have already got the basic you have in their stash, they're not going to buy it.
Right. So even the things that you think are not hurting anyone by being in your inventory, right? And I always like to think about it, and Cathy, you say this too, right? This is your cash investment, right? So you have to be looking at it as that piece of inventory that's been sitting right there is a cash investment that you have made. And we have to be thinking about it in, am I getting ROI here? And sometimes that's not the most fun way to view the business, but I'll tell you what is fun: when you start seeing your cash supply go up.
Right.
Right.
And then, you can decide what to do with it. You can buy new inventory, you can pay yourself more. It gives you a lot more freedom to turn that dead inventory into cash.
Yeah. Sunny, have you found that by kind of having the data to back up some of your decisions, that it has changed how you approach maybe, let's say, something like markdowns or moving merchandise that maybe you would have held on to a little bit longer?
Yeah, I think that's, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I think a lot of, especially probably yarn store owners, like you get really attached to certain yarns because you love it personally. It's like, I love this yarn. But I really learned to let go. Like if it is not, basically I look at it like every item in my store has a job to do. And if it's not doing its job, it needs to get out of there. It's like, it's taking up space. It needs to pay its rent, basically. And if it's not paying its rent, then it's got to go. And so, and so then I'll like maybe hold on to a few skeins for myself, and then the rest of it goes in clearance and goes away. And then the fun thing about that is then you have that, like Cathy just said, then you have that money that you can spend on something else and try something new. And one of the things, after working with Retail Orbit and with you guys now for a while, my customers are like, you are always getting new things in the store, which we all know our customers love that. Like they love knowing that every time they come in, there's going to be something new. You can only do that if you're moving things through the store quickly enough. And if things are just sitting, then your customers get bored and they just are like, they're not going to want to come in because they know they're not going to see anything new.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about turn in just a bit because that is a very hot topic, as we all know. So I have two more quick slides before we jump into some of the reports. And I just want to, kind of put this on people's radars. We have two things that we need to contend with right now. If you do feel like you're in a position and your data is telling you that you have more inventory than you need, one is, how do we get rid of some of that aged merchandise or, turn that into cash? And the other is, do I have merchandise that's landing on the books in December that I don't need, right? And putting protections around that is a smart retail move. So if you are at capacity right now, if you are bursting at the seams, I'm really doing good on these unintentional.
You are.
Yeah. If you're bursting at the seams right now, and there's merchandise that has not arrived and it's out of the cancel window, you may not want to bring it in unless it is necessary merchandise, unless it is needed goods. If you're just bringing in goods to bring it in because it's on order, you may want to put a little thought into that. And then lastly, before we jump into some of the reports, I want to emphasize that one of the beautiful things that, Cathy's able to do, and, Sunni gets de facto through the reports in Retail Orbit, is we're not just looking at your own data, right? So we are analyzing, obviously, your sales and how you've performed and what your inventory levels have been and where we think you can forecast for the next 12 months. But one of the beautiful things that we're able to do is we're looking at the larger industry. So we're looking at all our collective yarn retailers and see where they're trending, see what categories are performing well. And we use that information to then help inform our clients' plans. So you're kind of getting this, and Cathy, I don't know if you want to speak to that, because I know that that's something that you're very passionate about.
Yes, I am very passionate about this. One of the things when I had my store, I also used Management One. And one of the key benefits was that because Management One can see the data, not just from my store, but across the industry, is they know when things are speeding up. They see the trends. And so they know when to push the certain categories higher than maybe even I was comfortable with, but then I always met the goal, or slow it down a little bit if things are slowing down. And that was so helpful. That really produced so much more cash in my business that I think that's super important. We do have a couple of questions, Dane.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's jump into some questions.
Okay. I wanted to actually, if it's okay, I'm going to jump in because Rachel asked a good question. And we actually talked about this when we were prepping for this call, because unlike regular retail businesses, yarn stores often stay busy in January and February, like Rachel's mentioning, because that's very true for me. Like my January is almost as busy as like November, maybe as busy. And so let's see, still plan for it. So this is the thing I was going to say is with having this very focused plan using Retail Orbit and Management One, I can look at what sold, like within the categories, I can look at what sold well in January and February of last year. And that way I can plan to have enough inventory in those categories, but maybe I don't need as much in every category. So then I can focus on the things that probably aren't going to sell in those months. And those are the things I can focus on getting rid of. So that way I'm not like under inventoried going into the new year, but I don't have excess in areas that I'm not going to need, if that makes sense. And maybe Cathy, you can.
Yeah, I think that made perfect sense.
Okay.
And in case everybody can't see Rachel's question, it's how do you scale down in December, but still plan for January and February, which are just as busy, especially when it takes time to get the orders in. And what I would say to that is we're only talking about scaling down the items in December that truly aren't selling. So the odds of them selling in January and February, if they haven't sold, especially by now at the end of November, because you're kind of in the busy season, you know, they're probably not going to sell. So it is being very strategic and selective. We're not saying like clear out all of your inventory. Just clear out the things that your customers are not voting for with their dollars. And that frees up the cash then to contact these vendors and make sure that you've got enough coming in January, early in January, to supply for that busy season.
The other point I'd like to make, because this was a piece of the puzzle that I was missing for a while, is that it's really helpful to look within, like, even if you look at a particular yarn. So I'm going to use an example that everybody will know. So say I'm looking at my Malabrigo Rios, which is one of my best-selling yarns. It's been really like the piece that I was missing is I was just thinking like, well, Malabrigo Rios always sells really well. I can have however much I want. But then I realized like, oh, but some colors actually don't sell that well. Like I don't need to stock certain colors if they're not selling well. So I can like move those out. And so sometimes I'll clear out, I'm not going to clear out obviously that yarn, but I'm going to maybe clear out a couple colors because they just aren't moving. But so anyway, that's a small point, but I just wanted to.
Yes. So it's a strategic, really, I call them surgical strikes, right? And the colors are a good example of that.
Yeah, and I should back up too. I think one of the interesting things of how we approach this is, we're looking at two really important things. One is we're looking at this whole business on a category level. So each category is a business unto itself, right? And they almost operate differently. So, holiday and gifting items are going to have a different sales cadence and inventory cadence than some of your other categories, right? And if January is a big month in certain categories, we're planning the inventory levels for you. So we're going to let you know if January still is a booming month and you still have business to be had, we're going to let you know where you should be on January 1st from an inventory perspective by category. And so we may bring you down in gift items and then keep you well stocked in other areas that we've historically sell well in January. So this is not a one size fits all solution. The way that we're talking about, it's never from the perspective of, go clear out all your merchandise so that you can come into December and look nice on a piece of paper for taxes. Under inventoried is just as big of a problem as over inventoried, right? We don't want to lose sales and we don't want people walking in January and going, oh, you're all cleared out. You have nothing for me. So it is very strategic how we look at each and every category and what the right inventory level should be. And you'll kind of see this on some of the reporting. So
I'm also, Dane, just real quick, that's also specific to each store. So for each of us, like it might be different. So my January, I might need, more fingering weight yarn, but like Rachel in New York might need more bulky weight yarn. So it's not going to be like, when we get this data, which I know you're going to talk about right now, but when we get it, it's not like a general plan for all yarn stores everywhere. It's really specific to your particular store and what your data looks like.
Yeah. And so here I'm going to show a store that we work with, and this is the yarn category. And what I'm going to show you is two different reports right now. I'm going to show you what it looks like for yarn as an overall category, and then go into a specific type of yarn, which is a subcategory, super bulky, right? And I want to just show a little bit about how we're thinking about this and our mentality behind how we plan. So if you see right there, the two numbers highlighting in green, this was the October plan for this retailer. So the plan was to do 13,500 in yarn. And what we ended up doing in October was 13,753. That is incredible to get precision like that. And to be honest, it's even that close is pretty rare, right? So I'm using an example that happened to have worked beautifully here, and more beautifully than I could have even imagined. But that doesn't come by accident, right? And that takes a lot of factors to say, hey, our goal is to do 13,500 in sales. That's not just, okay, well, let's see how it shakes out. We are planning those inventory levels for the month of October. What do I want to start October 1st with in terms of inventory in my yarn categories? And how much do I need to continue to receive throughout that month in order to keep my sales going? So I want you to just show you that $13,549 represents a 48% increase in sales over LY in the same month. So in yellow, we're looking at last year in October, and we're seeing we increased sales and we hit our target that we were hoping to hit. And then this is the big, and then year to date, we're tracking above. And here is what I would say, and Cathy, you can jump in. This was a category that we probably got more aggressive with in the amount of inventory that we were landing. And so, I know that sometimes around the holiday, we kind of get into this, again, this kind of, oh, do we have too much inventory? But here's an example of there was an opportunity to feed a category, and we fed it, and we saw the increases happen.
Yes. And you notice here also with less markdowns than the year before.
With less markdowns.
Because new and fresh is coming in all the time at the right amount. So there isn't a lot left to be marked down.
Right. So that idea of freshness is super important. And Sunny, you were just kind of speaking to it, is that customers love to come in. They love to see new stuff. If you're not planning for that, it's not going to happen accidentally. Right. So if you think of your shipments as, I get a big shipment maybe twice a year, I get one shipment a season. Instead, we're trying to create the mentality of how do we continue to land fresh goods and replenish merchandise's important categories throughout each and every month. And so when we look back at that 6-month period and say, hey, it may be time for a markdown, we really know it's time for a markdown. And so I want to show you something else down here in where it says annual KPI. We're turning right now at a 2.12. And so I come from the fashion world where sometimes you could see turns as much as 6, but I know very well that in this industry, hitting 2 is a milestone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cathy, could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I have, especially in yarn, 2 or higher is incredible. That means the merchandise is fresh, that markdowns are being taken regularly to move out what's not selling. And you can see here, one of the things we do is we always are looking for growth and the ability to push things higher. So you can see that our plan now is 2.94 for this store. So we're actually looking in over the next 12 months to get another full turn. And that can happen. I have seen it happen. Not often, but it does happen.
Right. And so planning that, right, we're creating the conditions and the roadmap to get where we need to be. And what this actually looks like from a cash perspective is in a quarter, so in a 4-month period, we've increased cash production, that ROI that we were talking about, that as Sunny said, which I'm stealing this from you, I will credit you, but you have to, each item has to pay its rent. I love that, right? We're seeing almost $5,000 increase in cash generation in the business. And that comes from increasing the turn, right? We're able to do, even though we're bringing in more merchandise, because we're spreading it out, you're able to build more cash into the turns.
Right. Yeah. So that, and for this store, it probably paid the rent, the additional cash.
It paid its rent. And now I want to go in within that same category. Now we're going one step deeper and we're looking at a specific subcategory. So now we're looking at super bulky yarn. And I thought that this was really interesting. Again, if you look up here in the green highlighted, the plan was to do 1,900. We fell a little bit short at 1,600, but that is an incredible increase over last year where we just did 776 in that category. So you're looking at, highlighted in yellow, 114% increase. So we saw an opportunity with this retailer. We planned it a little bit more aggressively. And so if you come down here, we're seeing a 77% growth year to date. And here is the really interesting part and where it gets a little more complicated, but just as interesting. If you look in this bottom section, you can see the plan for inventory, because remember, we're not just planning sales, we're planning what inventory levels you need to achieve those sales. We're looking at $7,600 planned inventory. We're a little bit higher, just shy, with $8,500. And so because we were applying more inventory to that class, we're 80% up in inventory from last year, but we're seeing it pay off with a 77% increase in sales. And then here is the magic number. The stock to sales ratio went down. So what that means in layman's terms is we needed less inventory on hand to do the amount of sales comparatively. So even though we have more inventory in the store, relatively speaking, because we're flowing it in and because we're moving it and we're turning it at this 2.35 in this category, right? We actually don't have as much inventory on hand compared to the sales we're doing. We actually brought that down by 15%, 16%. So that is a beautiful thing. And that is the whole philosophy of putting your merchandise to work, making it work for its rent, as we're kind of using on this story. And then I'm just going to show you, and this is from a completely different business, but I just wanted to give a peek into what our forecasts and plans actually look like and what our clients receive is, as you can see, we're looking at October, and this is 2023. We're looking at forecasted sales for 12 months ahead. So I just picked a little window into that, and you can see we're looking at October, November, December through February. So each month there is a plan to do in sales, right? We see in this business, it increases in October, drops a little in November, and then December through February, we really see a slope down. But these forecasted beginning of month in the gold column, that's actually showing what this retailer should start each month with in terms of how much inventory at retail they need to start each month with. And then below in the purple, then we're calculating, if that's what we need to start each month with, how much do you need to continue to order? So we have what's called your open to buy. Like that is the foundation of your open to buy. Month by month, and you can see at the very bottom line, and we see negative 5,000, negative 6,000, 3,900, and then 3,500. That is how much available money in the business is available to spend on new merchandise. So the negative means, hey, we're a little overbought right now. We're going a little heavy into November and December, as you can see with those numbers. And then dollars start opening up back into the business to go purchase in December through February. So this is a really specific roadmap of how to spend your dollars, and then it breaks down by class. So I know I'm throwing a lot out there, But, Sunny, maybe you can help turn this report into a little bit more of just how you actually practically use it with Cathy.
Yeah, that's great, because I was just thinking that. So to make sure everybody's following, so I get these reports every month, and then Cathy and I meet and we go over them together. And then I refer to them throughout the month, and I use them to plan ahead. So I look at my forecast sales, I make sure I have that number somewhere where I can see it like almost every day, just so that it's in my mind, like this is what I'm going for that month's sales. And then I check in on it throughout the month. Like, how am I doing? Am I getting close? And like, I want to meet those numbers. And sometimes sometimes retail but I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you telling me I can make that much money this month? Sometimes they feel out of reach, but having those sales goals is incredibly important. And I've been sharing them with my staff as well. And then also giving them incentives. So when we meet our sales goals, I'm actually giving them a little bonus each month. And if we go over the sales, then I give them a little bit bigger bonus. So that's been really fun and, motivating. And then I also keep an eye on, I really watch my, let's see. So is that number on there? On order? Yeah. So on order. But what I would say that this doesn't show exactly is I get an open to buy number for each month in each of my categories. So I know how much money I have to spend in fingering weight yarn, how much I have to spend in DK weight yarn, worsted, etc. So that way, when I'm meeting with my sales reps, I have that information in front of me and I just keep an eye on it. So when I'm ordering things, and then I order out. So like, I know a lot of us do, like when you meet with your reps and then you order out, I make sure that like, oh, look, I have like $1,000 to spend in February for DK weight yarn. Cool. I'm going to spend that. It has given me so much confidence, because I used to get really nervous. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. Like when I met with my reps, I would get really nervous and be like, ooh, what? I just would feel overwhelmed. Like, I don't know what I can buy. And I tend to be conservative and I want to underbuy. And I've really learned through working with you guys and with Retail Orbit that being under inventoried is as bad as being over inventoried. It really cuts down on your forecast sales. So you'll see, like, if you don't have enough, and it just makes sense, logical sense, but I don't know, it's just one of those things, like, I didn't understand it so well. And actually, I want to say that is what kind of instigated my desire to do this webinar, because I saw, and maybe some of you guys are on this call who are on that thread in Facebook in our shop owners group, talking about how sales were down. And so people were like not ordering anything. And I was like, no,
Right.
that is
And
just bad.
So important. So like, because
Yeah.
again, there could be something happening, and I'm just using, the example we have, that's super bulky, where we applied some principles of, hey, we're going to get a little more aggressive. And there may be something happening completely different in another area of the business where you're completely overbought and you have too much merchandise and you have to start having a different strategy there. And each business becomes its own, each category becomes its own like business unit.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not just buying willy-nilly, like you're really buying in categories and you're following that plan. And then, and then you just start to see, it's like you start meeting those sales because you've got the inventory for people when they're coming in looking for it. And I have an intuitive sense about that at some level, but just to have the exact numbers and know that, oh, in January last year, all of these people came in and bought worsted weight yarn. Like, I need to make sure I have enough worsted weight for all those people that are going to come in January and want to knit for themselves. It's so helpful. So I think that's the key for me that I want all my fellow shop owners to get, is like having these numbers gives you such a clear plan, and it gives you so much confidence because you know what you need to do. And then meeting with Cathy will help me. She'll look at things and be like, it looks like you have some old stuff in worsted weight that you need to get rid of. Go find it. And I love having a task, like give me a task and I'm on it. So then I go and I find it and then I figure out what to do with it to get it to move. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a funny, I was at a conference and it was a husband and wife shop owner duo. And the I said, well, the merchandise I have, it's been there for a long time, but it's still good. I could still sell it. And her husband politely said, well, the tags are yellow at this point, so maybe it's not so good. So that's a good rule of thumb. If the tags are yellow, if the packaging is starting to collect that dust, it may be time.
And I just want to jump in and say, one of the things I find with clients a lot is missed opportunities. So, as we work together monthly, I'll point out like, hey, I think you could get a little more aggressive here, make sure you're buying all of the plant because it's working.
Cathy says that to me a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes when the retailer doesn't want to do it, I'll say, look, just do it for me. Like, trust me. And let's just try it. And they do it and it works. And I love that.
Yeah. And the concept of open to buy, and, I was a buyer for many years, and this was my favorite part. When you take a markdown in an area of the business that has over inventory positions, it literally opens up dollars for you to spend in the more productive areas of the business. So if there's something that's doing really well, right, by taking that market down and turning that old merchandise into cash, you then have the money to go spend on something that's really producing some good ROI for the business. So you're almost, stealing from one for the other, but it could really kind of help you shift the focus and focus on the areas that are, potentially missing opportunity. So is Cathy, are there any Q&As right now? Are there any questions?
Not right now, no.
Okay, so we'll kind of go through our last slides, and then I really want to open it up for questions for Sunny, for Cathy, for myself about Management One, about what we're talking about today, whatever it may be. Really feel free to jump in. We want to make this as open as possible. So when we're talking about year-end tips, and we can think about it as, again, we're really viewing it through the lens of targeted, right? So where are the areas that we can target some pinpoint promotions? I would say, leading up to the holidays, right? Now is your kind of Hail Mary to sell what's in stock right now, especially if they're holiday related items. So Cathy, do you have any tips on kind of how to handle those holiday goods?
Yes, definitely. If you have anything seasonal at this point, December is the time. So take a small markdown or do a buy one, get one 25% off, something to move that seasonal merchandise out during the season, because after Christmas, they're not going to want it even at 50% off, and the worst thing I hear people do is pack it up for next year. No. Get your cash out of it now and move it out. So you can bundle it. You can try remerchandising, although we're running out of time. I would say it needs to start selling very soon. But those buy one, get one purchases are right now, I'm seeing them work really, really well.
Yeah, that's a great way to move merchandise, especially if you get you amortize the savings over multiple products.
I would also say, I'd say this a lot to people, but I really feel like doing a weekly email, if you're not doing a weekly email, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. So I do weekly emails, and even just doing a like this time of year, I'll start doing like stocking stuffer ideas emails, or gift, I'm sure a lot of you guys do this, but knitted gift ideas emails. And it's amazing. Like they want suggestions right now because they're overwhelmed. There's so much going on. They're shopping for all these people. One of the things I do, which this was a Retail Mavens thing, they have some great ideas for holiday, like getting stuff moving. And I do, what do I call it? It's like a 12 days of Christmas event. So I'm starting it tomorrow. And each day I highlight a particular item, and I go through the store and I pick things that I want to get rid of, or things that have been slow movers. And I do those exact sorts of things. So every day it's like a buy one, get one deal. Like, and it might be like buy 2 of this French soap, get one 50% off, or, you know, and I do it different every day. I'll do kits, like knitting kits, and it's a percentage off. And then, so for 12 days, they get an email every day with the item and, you know, something fun about it. And then they can wait to ship it. They can put a note and say, please hold for ship. And people do it. It's so fun. Last year we had, I don't know how many people would participate. So they, you know, maybe they didn't order every day, but they ordered like 6 days out of the 12. And so I would just hold their items for them. And then at the end of the 12 days, I send them an invoice for the shipping and I ship it all out to them. And people loved it because they felt like they were getting like this, they were just given these suggestions. They didn't have to think about it, and they could just buy stuff for their families for gifts. It was great. So something like that is really fun. And like I said, I pick things that I want to move. So it's a fun way to do it.
And the other thing that's on this list that's working really, really well right now is I just heard from some retailers throughout Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, are the mystery bags or the grab bags. So, you know, you put a bunch of stuff in a bag, it's $100 retail value, you sell it for 50, and people are loving them. A brown paper bag. So like, it doesn't have to be fancy.
I did that. I want to share this quick story. I did that this summer. Because I usually do it at the end of my clearance sale. And I can't take credit for this idea because it was another friend's shop who did this, called random bags of crap. You call them random bags of crap, and you put them in a brown paper bag and you mark them way down. And I had this woman call me. I'm in Eureka, California. This woman called me from Virginia, and she was like, "Are you out of the random bags of crap? I really wanted one." It was hilarious. Like, she wanted one and her friend wanted one. And I was like, I'm sorry, I sold them already. I just thought it was hilarious.
Vera has a question. She says, I've learned that I'm way, way over inventoried. I need to move merch out, but there's so much. I would look like I'm going out of business. Is there a more subtle way to get this going? And what I would say to Vera, then you guys can chime in, is this is the absolute right time. You can have a semi-annual clearance sale starting in December, where you can move out a ton of this merchandise. It's kind of the season to be clearing out. So I don't think people will think you're going out of business. You will just be having a semi-annual clearance sale like many other retailers, and people want these deals now. So definitely run that, and you can give any of us a call and we could walk through that a little bit more. But that's what I would do. And I don't think people will think you're going out of business.
Yeah, I actually have a pretty strong opinion on this, and that is it's okay to tell your customers why you're having a sale. And what I mean by that is, if you just randomly start putting everything on sale and it's all across the store, but if you make it the winter blowout sale, right, and you kind of put a little focus on it, it starts to make sense to the customer. You know, we used to do when I was a buyer, we used to do in the July, we used to do a sidewalk sale where we would actually bring merchandise outside, and the sale merchandise would be in buckets or racks on the side of the outside of the store, and we would do a sidewalk sale. And then we mirrored that and we did the winter sidewalk sale in January, where we'd actually set it up inside of the store and make it look like, you know, a little area with buckets and fun little exploration places where they can find some great deals. And so I think as long as, you know, you kind of couch it as there's a reason for this sale, and you could say, they do this a lot now. I don't know if you've seen it with direct-to-consumer retailers. We bought too much and you're getting the savings. You know, I think as long as you're communicating with your customer, making it fun for them, having a sense of exploration. I used to love my accessories departments. I would do bucket areas. So I would have a $5 bucket, a $7 bucket. And, you know, it just creates a fun way for people to shop. And so they won't even be thinking about, you know, anything like a going out of business sale.
Perfect.
So we're coming up to the top of the hour, so I'll just kind of give it one more opportunity for anyone to jump in with a question. And then in the meantime, you could always email me after. Cathy will send out your email address as well in the follow-up email, but I'm just dane@management1.com. And then you could also visit our website, management-1.com, and that will give you some more information. But in the kind of wrap up, so, you know, the points that we want, I hope people walked away with, and I'll let Cathy and Sunni chime in as well, would just be, you know, listen, at the end of the day, the economy is in a funky place right now. Stuff looks good. The boots on the ground is maybe a little bit different of a vibe, but having the data to back up your business is going to be critical for your success. And I think that what I find when I speak to retailers, and I include myself in this because I was a retailer who used Management One, is it started to feel less like a stressful hobby and more like a, hey, now I'm really cooking with gas, right? I have some ammunition behind me. I know what I feel a better sense of control around areas of my business, and therefore I feel more empowered in my day-to-day. And, you know, Cathy, I'm going to give you a shout out. I'm sure Sunni will as well, but working with a coach really makes a huge difference. You know, it's someone who is there to bring a objective, non-emotional perspective to the business, to kind of help point out, again, those areas of missed opportunities, the areas where maybe we need to, you know, get back on track, you know, be a supporter and a cheerleader at some point, be a slap on the wrist at some point. But the ultimate goal is to keep you accountable to the goals that we've set out together over the next 12 months and really how to achieve it. So, you know, with that, I'll kind of get things wrapped up, and Sunni, Cathy, I'll kind of turn it over to you with any last thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think you described it. I know that this changed my life when I had my retail store, because like you said, I felt so much more in control, and then I could really do those things that I wanted to do because I had the cash available to do them. So it was great.
And I would say that's so true for me. And I had been looking for something for years to give me the numbers. Like I just needed the numbers. And I think the thing is, shop owners are so busy. We have so many different things to think about every day, and it can be overwhelming. And so for me, being able to just like let somebody else give me that information, like I would never have the time or the patience to pull that data together on my own. It just would be exhausting. And so just to be handed those reports every month is so life-changing. It's just reduced my stress immensely. And like I said before, it's given me so much confidence to know that I know what to do. And also, if I get stuck, I have somebody that I can call or email and be like, Cathy, I need help. What should I do about this? Even little things, you know, to have somebody there. And honestly, every time we meet, I actually feel better. Like I tend to be more nervous and like I worry about things. So whenever I meet with Cathy, she's like, no, you're doing great. Look, you know, and we look at the numbers and it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm doing all right. This is good. So it's just been so helpful. And that's what I want for all my fellow yarn shop owners. Like, I want you to have that same sense of confidence and stress, like less stress in working with your business. And having those numbers is just, you know, it's like, don't put your head in the sand about the numbers. They're just so key. It's so important. And it's just great fun. Actually, once you get it and you have that information, it's actually really fun to be able to work with it rather than being afraid of the numbers. Now I feel really like excited, like, oh, okay, can't wait to see what they're telling me my sales should be next month in each of these categories and how am I going to do that? So it's really fun.
I know one of the first questions I ask, when we start working with someone is, do you know how much inventory you have on hand? And they go, I don't want to look at it. Right.
Right.
So, Sunni, I just want to say a special thank you to you. I think that this was, your brainchild, and I'm just really impressed by the passion that you bring to this, and more so wanting to help other shop owners out. And so thank you for spearheading this. And Cathy, always a pleasure to chat with you and hear your expert insights. And really, we're just hoping that we can get in touch with anyone who wants to talk more and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dane.
Right. And again, a recording will be sent out, so you'll be able to watch and send to anyone in your extended network. So thank you, everyone, for being here, and happy retailing over this holiday season.
Thanks so much.
Mhm.